In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and video media online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the Ongoing Dehumanizing Legacy of the Doctrine of Discovery by Mark Charles and Soon-Chan Rah. This is from Chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Mark, said this almost under my breath as I walked past a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. Suck it up, was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice I said to the people, you cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human. Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. You are not welcome here, he said as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the inappropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. A white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. society become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. The primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination that shaped the European colonial settler worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit. End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Dum Diversus would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual slavery. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese took these ecclesiastical statements to heart and perpetrated the slave trade from the African continent to the European and the American continents. As a Christian ruler, the King of Portugal would have power endowed from the church to take possession of the other as slave labor from the continent of Africa. The pagan African body was just another commodity to be taken for the pleasure and profit of the European Christian body, the one made most fully in the image of God. In January of 1454, Pope Nicholas authored another bull. The book is Unsettling Truths by Charles and Rob.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy midweek. Donald Trump just called Vladimir Zelensky a dictator and lied about how much money we've sent.
Congressman? Good morning. Hi. Just checking, making sure.
Breathtaking.
Okay.
Does Putin own Trump? I believe so. I've got a lengthy piece detailing all of the links over at HartmannReport.com today. We'll talk about that in the second hour of the program. Also, Michael Tomasky, the publisher, or the editor-in-chief, I believe is his title, of The New Republic, which publishes my work from time to time, is going to be with us to talk about the United States actually joining an international fascist network of fascist countries and political parties under Trump. Also, critics warn that Trump's latest order should concern you more than any so far, and Newsweek is alerting people on Social Security to be ready that there may be benefit failures as a result of Elon Musk laying off people at the Social Security Administration. So a lot to talk about there. In our third hour, Dean Obeidallah is going to drop by. Did Donald Trump end the federal investigations into Musk? Sure looks like it. He's got a FOIA filing going on. And a federal prosecutor in D.C. resigned yesterday after declining a request from Trump to freeze the assets of a company that was providing, green services, as it were, to the federal government. They're now trying to reach into our checking accounts and freeze our money? Seriously? We'll talk about all those things. But in our first hour, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the entire hour. taking your calls at 202-808-9925. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. He's a current member and the chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's the co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and the chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus. Pocan.house.gov is his website, and also his Blue Sky, whatever you call it, title, label, handle. And Congressman, welcome back to the program. It's always good having you with us. I'm curious your take on Donald Trump unilaterally surrendering Ukraine to Russia. What the hell is going on here, sir?
You know, it's not even a daily or sometimes even an hourly occurrence of something that Donald Trump does that doesn't make sense. And this is one more of those. You know, to do what he's doing is giving, first of all, he's caving in to Russia, which is not exactly, the friendliest country to the United States. Second, he's telling Europe that, we may not be there should you be ever in trouble. And I think he's, really bargaining from a position of weakness right now. But it's on top of all the other stuff. I literally just left a press conference we had over at the state capitol in Madison, Wisconsin, with, literally dozens and dozens of Democratic state legislators who are all talking about all the cuts that are happening as well, or potential cuts through this reconciliation bill that now they've said we're going to take up in the House next week. So there's just so much happening. I think the most important thing, though, Tom, and I'm going to stress this, and I'll probably say it too many times during the program today, this is most everything that Donald Trump's been doing, especially around the reconciliation bill and the cuts, is all about a giant transfer of wealth from the middle class and those aspiring to be to the wealthiest through the tax cut, the $4.5 trillion minimum that they need for the next 10 years. So the $1.5 trillion in cuts that are going to affect Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and school funding and so much more, veterans programs, that's a part of it. But this is a giant transfer of wealth that it's been their goal all the time. It's not about waste, fraud, and abuse. And I just think we got to repeat that over and over and over again so that people really understand.
I get that, but I believe it's something much greater than that. Elon Musk started visiting Russia right after Putin became president. He first went in 2001, then he went back in 2002. Jim Stewartson's got over at mind-war.com has all the contacts. He's been talking to Putin for the last couple of years. He's interrupted Starlink service to Ukraine on behalf of Putin asked him to not offer Starlink to Taiwan as a favor to President Xi. Apparently, he has ceded to that. And now he is taking apart the American government. I could see Vladimir Putin, if he owns Donald Trump, and I believe he does, not only saying, I'm going to keep Ukraine and screw you, and you're going to pull out of Europe because that's next on my menu, but also saying to Donald Trump, these Democrats, they're just laughing at you. They're spending all this money. They're doing all this stuff. Your government is all bloated. I mean, why don't you have my friend Elon Musk come in and just destroy the American government? It looks to me like our country is under assault, like this is war. And the war is being waged against us by Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I definitely think this is the wealthiest in this country trying to get what they think is their share, right? They're fighting to get this tax cut. That'll, it's 10 years worth of tax cuts. This is huge money to Elon Musk. And why do you think he does this with Russia or China, right? It's all about money. This is for him to enrich himself. But, we watch Mark Zuckerberg roll over and get his belly rubbed. We're watching Jeff Bezos do a lot of things like that as well. This is about the wealthiest ripping off, a Republican ripoff of taxpayers to get programs that help the middle class and those aspiring to be in the middle class and directly transfers that wealth to the wealthiest. So that's what reconciliation's about. But it's, the fraud is that it's about waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, in reality, it's about getting this money so that they can profit off of it. And Elon Musk will use whoever to do that. And I'm sure Vladimir Putin is certainly willing to use Donald Trump also to his goals. At the end of the day, the buffoon, the person who is not getting it all, but will at least get a tax cut out of it, is Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I get all that, but J.D. Vance is a follower of Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin has, apparently as is Musk. I can't confirm that, but, Yarvin is like the guru to a lot of these tech bros, these billionaire tech bros. And his position is that democracy has failed. The democracy is a failed system. The democracy needs to be abandoned, that we need to have a technocracy, that we should replace most of our government institutions with AI programs that will decide who appropriately gets Social Security, how much Medicare gets paid out, all these other things. It looks to me like that's what they're executing. Let's destroy America. Let's tear down this democratic system. Let's replace it with something that is far more autocratic. Trump is also pursuing the same plans that both Putin and Orban did when they first came into power. Orban in 2010 and Putin in 2001, which is suing the media, trying to put the media out of business, intimidating the media. Now you've got the head of the FCC, Brennan Carr, is opening an investigation maybe even a criminal investigation into NPR, for God's sake. I mean, these people are playing for keeps. They are trying to destroy our country, Congressman.
Yeah, and the good news, and there is some good news, is that we do have a legal system that right now is helping to push back. But elections have consequences, right? We don't have the House. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the executive branch. So we need that litigation. We need the groups that are doing that litigation. And then we need to get this information out there, Tom. And that's why we just talked with people who receive Medicaid and what they're worried about. It means if someone who's with a disability can't live in their home, the quality of life. We just talked to a veteran who's seeing the firings at the VA hospital across the country. And we just did the PACT Act so that more veterans could get health care. We already have a staff shortage. And if you take away more people, more veterans will bluntly die if they don't have access to health care. We just had a teacher talking about the cuts to Title I and IDEA funding, because there's, I think, a $330 billion cut out of the reconciliation bill targeted towards the Department of Education. Well, not only does that mean fewer teachers and bigger class sizes, but it means a shift to local property taxes. So now you're going to get screwed by your local taxes. You're going to pay more so that these wealthy folks get the tax break as well. There's a lot that we need to address on this, but I think really keeping it to what they're up to with this tax cut, because it is so imminent. Next week is likely a vote in the House on reconciliation, I think is what we need people, while members are home this week, they need to hear from people who live in their district about this.
I prefer calling it treason, frankly. I think they are destroying this country that our founders had this vision for of a democratic republic. I get what you're saying, but and Trump just filed a motion this morning or yesterday afternoon, I guess, with a federal judge saying, this is the judge, forgive me, I'm forgetting his name, who said you must put funding to USAID and National Institutes of Health back into place. And Trump just said, no, we're going to ignore your order.
Yeah,
in a filing.
Yeah, and that's one
we're
of the
destroying the American government.
Yeah, is dealing with that. No question. However, I truly believe fundamentally this is about oligarchs wanting to get richer, the richest in this country. And that's what Donald Trump's always been about. It's always been about himself and his family and the people who can afford to go to Mar-a-Lago. Elon Musk clearly is just someone who wants to enrich himself. I don't want to keep my eye off of that prize.
No, I get that. And then Putin made himself the richest man in the world. I mean, he built $1 billion dacha down in,
You can do it, right, in government. And Donald Trump is trying to continue that process. But at the same time, when this reconciliation bill moves, and if we really see this level of cuts coming through, by the time the average Republican who voted for Trump, who didn't expect this, they've been on the menu the whole time, it's going to be too late. So for me, what I've got to do is get members to hear from constituents now.
Yeah, I get it. It's 16 minutes past the, almost 17 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us here for the hour, the former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the chair emeritus, and he will be taking your calls on the other side of this break. Stay with us. You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can find him over on Blue Sky at the same, pocan.house.gov. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Stick around. Congressman Mark Pocan will be taking your calls in just a second. And welcome back. Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, good morning, Congressman. I'm a strong believer in foreign aid. I don't think we should cut it at all. It's an advantage that we have. However, I think we've got to be smarter and more transparent with it. So do you believe that, first of all, we should have line item approval for all of our foreign aid and publish where the money's going? And also, do you believe that we should be more, say, pragmatic and transactional and repurpose a lot of our foreign aid to get preferred access or preferred customer status for the rare earths and the natural resources we need from the countries that we're giving foreign aid to?
Yeah, Tom, so I would say, I mean, our assistance that we provide around the world is part of our efforts, our diplomatic efforts. You know, it's complements, I guess you'd say, what the Pentagon does. And, you know, we put unlimited amounts of money in Pentagon, but we put very little, less than 1%, into USAID. I don't think you'd ever get to line by line approval, because we can barely even pass the budgets that we do right now in Congress. We're 6 months late, and we could have a shutdown on March 14th because we can't do it. So I think that's impractical. What I'm worried about is when we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse in this way, we're taking the bait, because the only reason they're doing this is to get money to provide this tax cut for the wealthiest. So, you know, there's always going to be, they're going back 20 years to try to find fraud, Tom. It's ridiculous what they're doing in order to try to show this fraud. And then, you know, the haphazard problem of having these kids and Elon Musk with no federal experience doing this, they posted classified data on their website. They just said something was $8 billion that was really $8 million. They don't understand the fundamentals out of what they're doing. And I don't want to then let them lead the narrative that somehow there's waste, fraud, and abuse, and they're the only ones who care about it. The reality is this is about a giant Republican ripoff, a shift of money from the middle class and those aspiring to be to the wealthiest, and we've got to keep that central focus.
Ziggy, in Oneonta, New York, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. We have about 1 minute and 20 seconds. If you'd be short, Ziggy.
Okay, I'll be quick. Congressman, I want to know why the Democratic leadership is allowing the Republicans to play them for saps. You're talking about this legal system. If you get all the way to the Supreme Court and they rule against us, what happens then? Or you get all the way to the Supreme Court and they rule with us by some miracle, then Trump doesn't follow it. It's a failed strategy. You got to have a better strategy. That strategy is a failure.
Yeah, because ultimately that is what we have. That's what makes us a nation, right? So you're going to have to count on the legal process. And it's Trump-appointed judges that are ruling in our favor along the process. So, you know, they're going to try lots of things. He's trying to see how much of a power grab he can ultimately do. But we all need to speak out, and we have to put the pressure, especially on the Republicans. Anyone who votes for that reconciliation bill, that should be their final thing that they're able to do in office, because we're going to make sure they're not reelected. And we all have to call the members of Congress and Senate and let them know that.
Yeah. Putin's on TV right now saying the U.S. and Russia are building trust to resolve Ukraine. I'm just boggled by the dimensions of this traitor who's in the White House. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. You know, other countries enjoy benefits like free health care in college, modern mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs. They also have inexpensive internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, well, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out. Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan is on the line with us, taking your calls. Joe in Cupertino, California, you are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Tom, thank you. I registered for, what is that, 5051 yesterday. It was a very good idea.
Oh, great.
March 15th, is that the date, if I'm not mistaken? Congressman Pocan, it was a pleasure to speak with you. I don't often speak with you. Mo Khan is my congressman, but you sit on appropriations. And I wanted to know if you were aware of this letter that was sent by Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Rosa DeLaCaro about Keith Hexet's housing arrangement.
About which, I think I'm on the letter, actually, because I think Rosa DeLaCaro is the chair of the Approps Committee, but I missed the words you said.
Okay, well, he's asked.
It's about Pete Hexet's housing, Congressman.
Yes. And apparently, found a place with 4,000 square foot a flag officer's house that apparently wasn't in the budget, but it's requiring like $137,000 worth of repair work. And he wants it to be painted before he moves in there, apparently. But you have a letter that she wrote dated the 30th or the 7th, February, that he's supposed to respond back to you by the 21st of this month as to why he requires government housing and why does he have to live in this house. And we're supposed to tell us, if he's going to pay rent. He's making $400,000 a year. I just wanted to point out, though, that in September of 23, Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to cut the defense secretary's pay to $1, and she did it again in June of 24.
Yeah.
So,
Joe, let's get the congressman's response here.
Yeah, Joe. So I hear what you're saying. So Rosa DeLaCaro is the chair of the ranking Democrat. of the Appropriations Committee, was the chair, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the ranking member of the MILCON Military Veterans Construction Subcommittee. So I think that's why they did the letter, and we are doing lots of letters like that to get the information. I think it was just those two on that particular letter. I know there's a few others that we've also sent. Quite honestly, there's a lot of letters flying. There's a lot of litigation flying. We're trying to get the information where we can and fight back. But litigation, honestly, is going to be and has been so far our best friend on things. With letters, we can try to get information, but we're not directly in charge. And if they ignore letters, just bluntly, there's not a lot of recourse until they come before a committee, and then we can try to ask it in person.
Michael in Gainesville, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. We have just about a minute, Michael, so please a quick one.
Okay, real quick. Representative Pocan, you are in one of 3 states that has it written into its U.S. state constitution the obligation of happiness. That's Wisconsin, Virginia, and Massachusetts. And the reason that's important is because no child is happy making an F, a D, or a C. And you may not be aware of it. Tom, there is. But every child that is biologically and physically able to read and learn all the science, math, and history expected of an A student should be able to. And it's our responsibility in those 3 states.
So, Michael, your question?
The state constitution. The question is, will you back that state constitution?
Thank you.
Yeah, if I was in the state legislature, I would do everything I can to do exactly what you're saying. I think we're trying to do that by fighting back on the cuts on Department of Education, where they really want to get rid of the department completely, Tom. And then, of course,
yeah, I get it. 26 minutes past the hour, 27 minutes now. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, the chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program, one of our favorite days of the week. We'll be right back with, on the other side of this break here at the bottom of the hour, with more of your calls for Representative Mark Pocan. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where despair is not an option. We'll be right back with your calls for Congressman Pocan.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Defying Hitler by Sebastian Haffner, a memoir. This is from chapter 17, about a little more than a third of the way into the book. At first, the revolution only gave the impression of being an historical event like any other, a matter for the press that might just possibly have some effect on the public mood. The Nazis celebrate January 30th as their day of revolution. They are wrong. There was no revolution on January 30th, 1933, just a change of government. Hitler became chancellor, by no means the Führer of the Nazi regime. The cabinet contained only 2 Nazis apart from him. He swore an oath of allegiance to the Weimar Constitution. The general opinion was that it was not the Nazis who had won, but the bourgeois parties of the right, who had captured, in quotes, the Nazis and held all the key positions in the government. In constitutional terms, events had taken a much more conventional, unrevolutionary course than most of what had happened during the previous 6 months. Outwardly also, the day had no revolutionary aspects, unless one considers a Nazi torchlight procession through Wilhelmstrasse or a minor gunfight in the suburbs that night as signs of a revolution. For most of us outsiders, the experience of January 30th, 1933 was that of reading the papers and the emotions we felt while we were doing so. The morning headline was, "Hitler called to president." That produced a certain nervous, impotent irritation. Hitler had been called to the president in August and November. He had been offered the vice-chancellorship and then the chancellorship. Both times he had set impossible conditions, and both times there had been solemn declarations, "Never again." Each time, "never again" had lasted exactly 3 months. Hitler's opponents in Germany at that time suffered from a compulsive urge to offer him everything he wanted, indefatigably, and at an even cheaper price, indeed to press it upon him. It's the same now with his opponents outside Germany. Again and again, this appeasement was formally renounced, and again it gaily reappeared at the crucial moment. Just so today. One's only hope was Hitler's own unreasonableness. Would it not sooner or later exhaust the patience of his opponents? Then, as now, it became apparent that their patience knew no bounds. At midday, the headline said, "Hitler makes impossible demands." We nodded, half reassured. It was only too credible. It would have gone against his nature to ask for less than too much. Perhaps the cup had once more passed from us. Hitler, the last defense against Hitler. At about 5 o'clock, the evening papers arrived. Cabinet of National Unity formed Hitler Reichschancellor. I don't know what the general reaction was. For about a minute, mine was completely correct. Icy horror. Certainly this had been a possibility for a long time. You had to reckon with it. Nevertheless, it was so bizarre, so incredible to read it now in black and white. Hitler, Reichschancellor. For a moment, I physically sensed the man's odor of blood and filth, the nauseating approach of a man-eating animal, its foul, sharp claws in my face. Neshenov tried to smile, started to consider, and found many reasons for reassurance. That evening, I discussed the prospects of the new government with my father. We agreed it had a good chance of doing a lot of damage, not much chance of surviving very long. A deeply reactionary government with Hitler as its mouthpiece. Apart from this, it did not really differ much from the 2 governments that had succeeded Bruning's. Even with the Nazis, it would not have a majority in the Reichstag. Of course, that could always be dissolved, but the government had a clear majority of the population against it, in particular the working class, which would probably go communist now that the Social Democrats had completely discredited themselves. One could prohibit the communists, but that would only make them more dangerous. In the meantime, the government would be likely to implement reactionary social and cultural measures with some anti-Semitic additions to please Hitler. That would not attract any of its opponents to its side. Foreign policy would probably be a matter of banging the table. There might be an attempt to rearm. That would automatically add the outside world to the 60% of the home population who were against the Hitler government. Besides, who were the people who had suddenly started voting Nazi in the last 3 years? Misguided ignoramuses for the most part, victims of propaganda, a fluctuating mass that would fall apart at the first disappointment. No, all things considered, this government was not a cause for alarm. The only question was what would come after it. It was possible that they would drive the country to civil war. The communists were capable of going on the attack before a prohibition against them came into force. The next day, this turned out to be the general opinion of the intelligent press. It is curious how plausible an argument it is, even today, when we know what came next? How could things turn out so completely different? Perhaps it was just because we were all so certain that they could not do so and relied on that with far too much confidence. So we neglected to consider that it might, if worse came to worse, be necessary to prevent the disaster from happening. Through the whole of February 1933, everything that happened remained a matter for the press. In other words, it took place in an arena that would lose all reality for 99% of the population the moment there were no newspapers. Admittedly, enough occurred in that arena. The Reichstag was dissolved. Then in a flagrant breach of the Constitution, Hindenburg also dissolved the Prussian regional parliament. There were fast and furious changes of personnel in the civil service. The book Defying Hitler.
That every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program, or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air. It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back, 30 past the hour. On the line with us, Congressman Mark Pocan. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program, taking your calls. And Roger in Seattle, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Congressman, for being there. I'm looking for your former colleague on the Progressive Committee, my Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal, who I've known since right after 9/11. But anyway...
She's going to be on the program tomorrow, Roger, FYI.
She's on tomorrow?
Yeah, I just
all right,
just learned.
Good.
So
okay, I can ask her too if the congressman can't immediately find the answer. Anyway, since lower courts are trying to stop this shock and awe, I'm wondering, one of two questions rather. Do you recommend that we non-lawyers find a 504 lobbying organization to file a amicus brief with the district or appeals courts? And two, when are you in Congress going to get these articles of impeachment going? So if you could answer either or both, that'd be great. Thank you.
This is a strategy of litigation and communication. So supporting the groups that are doing the lawsuits is really important. I don't know if individual amicus briefs are the best, but I think asking the groups that are doing the lawsuits, and there are many of them right now, but on the areas that you're most concerned, that's really important, because that is the work, the courts that are able to stop things that we can't right now legislatively, being in the minority. So I think that's important. And then communication, circulating the information out there, because folks, what's most troubling to me, Tom, is I read, and I shouldn't, some of the comments on social media, and they are the most uninformed people I have ever heard, because they just take whatever they hear from Elon Musk or Donald Trump or whatever conservative source, and they believe it. But, we've proven that, the Doge Commission is putting classified data on their website because they don't have the brains to know what that even means. They're saying they saved $8 billion on something, and it's really $8 million, and actually $2.5 million spent. So maybe it's $5.5 million. They don't know what they're doing because they don't understand the federal government. We need to get this information out. But most importantly is that this is all to steal money from the middle class and those aspiring to be in the middle class and giving it to Elon Musk and Donald Trump and people who belong to Mar-a-Lago. So the more we can recirculate that information, Republicans who aren't the most heavy Kool-Aid drinkers will realize that they're being screwed over by these policies, but it'll probably be too late after they've passed this tax cut. So we need to get the information out now.
Diane in Ann Arbor, Michigan, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I agree with Tom wholeheartedly that this problem is bigger than we realize with this takeover of democracy. And I'm afraid with Ukraine, this is an example of it where everybody can watch. In '94, Clinton convinced Ukraine and others to give up their nukes. Biggest mistake they could have made. And then they try to crawl out from under this agreement we had, calling it an agreement. Well, we didn't really, it's not bonded. I mean, are you serious? And also America and the UK pushed, really, by agreement, Ukraine to go ahead and fight this war. They had other options, but they went with America, and they've been burned twice. I'm surprised they'll even is.
So what's your question, Diane, for Congressman Pocan?
My question is, why aren't more of these politicians standing up for Ukraine? I watch the media. I'm into it a lot. I'm retired. I can spend the time. And I am not seeing politicians standing up. They want us to go in the streets and protest, but you don't see them even getting in front of a camera. And it's just very frustrating, and it's just...
Yeah, let's get his response, Diane.
They get a paycheck. They should earn it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Diane, so this is kind of a perpetual thing, and I tell you, it gets frustrating because there have been special orders, or people talking on the floor of Congress about these issues, but if you don't see it in the mass media or through now social media, it didn't happen, right? And that's part of the problem. But I want to say in the absolute strongest terms I could possibly say, in 1 week, the House is determined to vote on the reconciliation bill. And we have to really keep that focus. If anyone doesn't in the next 24 hours use the number that Tom will probably give you right after I finish talking and call your member of the House and the Senate and tell them not to support the reconciliation bill, we're going to do ourselves. Because if they start advancing this, and don't forget, March 14th is a government shutdown deadline, they're going to be able to do one of the largest transfers of wealth in the American history from the middle class and those aspiring to be in the middle class. So next week is the vote. We can do more than one thing at once, right? And people are talking about Ukraine, and I'm glad we're continuing to talk about this, especially with the bravado of Vladimir Putin right now. But there's an actual vote next week, because we don't schedule things, the Republicans do, on the reconciliation bill. And that call has to happen today. And better yet, if you're a member of Congress is doing a town hall, show up, do whatever you can to make sure that you're getting in their face, especially the Republicans that are the most likely to vote this bill. I don't think a Democrat will vote for it.
Yeah, and the number to call Congress is 202-224-3121. Kathy in Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Greetings, Jen. Thank you for taking my call. Mark, thank you for being such a wonderful advocate for our district. We just love you here, as you know. I was wondering if you guys have thought of getting up with the labor unions to back you up and engage in a little industrial sabotage. And I don't want anybody to freak out about this. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about perhaps some very well-targeted, random, unpredictable work stoppages. And let me tell you, there is a lot of union people that would engage in such things and would particularly be targeting the people that are supporting the politicians that are here to rip up. That's one thing. People, I run a little social media thing, and I'm telling you, people are very frustrated. They don't see the Democrats really coming out and doing, what they talked about in Pulp Fiction about getting medieval on your ass. So, think of things like that. There's wonderful people in the labor movement. They know how to talk to working people.
Let's get the Congressman's response.
They can do some really great things.
Thank you. What happened? Did we just hit a break? Why am I hearing it? Yeah. Well, okay, we're in a break. Our equipment just freaked out. Hang on. We're not in the break? Okay. All right, Congressman, we're just going to ignore that music. Congressman, you want to respond to her question?
Sure. Well, first of all, Kathy, thank you for being a constituent and for calling in today. I actually think there's something, and I'm really looking to a lot of the federal unions because they're obviously looking at what legality of anything they do could be. But, I've seen a national union leader who I really respect posed the idea of a wildcat strike the day that we could have a shutdown, because Donald Trump, I think, out of pure drama, will want a shutdown. Tom, in my gut, that's what I think he's.
Oh, he had the longest shutdown in history when he was president last time, and he loved it.
You know, Celebrity Apprentice, right? He loves it. It's drama, right? He thinks it makes a point. But if you actually shut down the federal government, not just the non-essential, so to speak, parts of it, but everything, people would feel the crunch. And he's hoping they won't, because a lot of those people have to work even when there is a shutdown. So, you know, I'm not advocating directly for it, but I am very intrigued by hopefully the unions are looking at this. And if they really want to show this guy to be the charlatan he is, there may be a way to, by showing how much the federal government really does impact your life, not just all the things we're talking about cuts, but, you know, very basic services. If the American people can't get that help, it might just prove Donald Trump to be the big liar that he is.
Joni in Red Bluff, California, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. I wanted to bring to light the 3 candidates that are running for the special election. And I was wondering how Congress is helping these candidates, and how can Americans help these 3 candidates? And if I could say their names, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Shoot, now I have it on my phone. There's Josh Wheel, and he's Florida District 6. That's on April 1st. Gay Valamont, and that's Matt Gaetz's position. That is on April 1st. And Blake Gindenbein, and that's November 4th in New York.
Gay will be on our program on Friday, by the way. Congressman?
Yeah. Well, Jeannie, thank you for doing that, because I'm in my federal office and I can't say vote for or vote against. So you mentioned the candidates that are out there. I think, you know, what people can do is support any candidate they support from any party. But I can't be more specific than that. But clearly, elections have consequences. We're living through the absolute living example of that statement. So thank you for calling and stating what you stated.
We'Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. It's it's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And yeah, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. The air. Okay, our automation system seems to have crashed, but it's all good. We can continue with the program here. Eric in Long Beach, California, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Let me start off by saying that I'm a black man. I'm gonna tell you what the general consensus is with black people in this country. We voted 80% black men for Kamala. Black women, 92% for Kamala Harris. And just to see Donald Trump, because a lot of these other groups voted for Trump, including 50 plus % of white women. Let me tell y'all this. Listen to me carefully. With these midterms, black people, we are saying we're not coming out for the midterms. You don't have to listen to me, Congressman. But I'm telling you, because I'm a black man, 55 years, I'm telling you, y'all better get a whole new different message if you expect us black people to come out and vote in these midterms. One other thing.
Well, what should that message be, Eric?
What should it be?
Yeah.
Well, we wanted police reform. We didn't get it because Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, they let them block it. Biden didn't really fight for it. He didn't fight for it like Lyndon Johnson fought for the Civil Rights Bill. He should have went in the back room.
Okay, I got it.
Broke
Eric,
some legs.
Eric, thank you for your call. Congressman, your thoughts?
Yeah, Eric, I hear you. I really do. The difficulty is we're not in charge of Congress right now, so we're not going to do policing reform, and we're not going to get some things done that you need done because we can't even put something to the floor of Congress. I guess you could technically through a discharge petition, which is a very arcane procedure that takes months to actually set up to actually do. But the reality is, if we don't vote, they will. I guarantee. They feel emboldened right now more than ever. In general, I agree. I mean, I think we need to fight much harder as Democrats for those core democratic values going back to FDR. And I think you're seeing more of that happen right now. But we also have to get the message out in different ways, not just through, mainstream TV. That's not where people get their information. There's a lot of things we got to do differently. And I think we're trying to get that across. But right now, there is truly a threat by what the Republicans are doing. And the best thing we can do is make sure they realize there's accountability, and that accountability is the midterm elections.
Okay. Diane in Mazomanie, Wisconsin, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Mr. Pocan. I'm wondering, why are they not calling out on the facts that the Social Security numbers are not recycled? So if they see a 150-year-old person or people with the access numbers, and why are they not called out on that?
So,
and the fact,
why are people why are Democrats letting Musk get away with lying about Social Security, Congressman?
Yeah. So, Diane, first of all, you're also a constituent. 2 for the day, Tom. I don't know if I've ever had that before.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, thanks for listening to Tom's program. So I think this is one where there's 2 different Inspector General reports that have, everything they're doing is wrong again. They're not correct on saying that there's 150-year-old people allegedly who don't exist that are getting checks. But the problem is there's 150 things they're saying that are wrong, right? And as we're trying to cover the 150, there's no singular message that is penetrating on that, which is why I try to always bring it back to what they're actually up to right now, which is trying to steal money from us to give to the wealthiest in this country. When it comes to data, we should be very concerned that they have access to data, not just because they've already made a lot of mistakes with the data, they don't understand what they exactly have, but also you're allowing this evil villain really in Elon Musk to look at things. He knows what his competitors are up to, potentially looking at this. He can turn on and off the revenue caps of the federal government. This is highly problematic.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's 49 minutes past the hour, almost 50. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. Stay with us. Make my mic hot? Oh, it is. Okay, great. Congressman, I'm sorry. Our hardware problem here is continuing, but we're still on the air, so all is good. We just don't have nice little music to bring you back in. Linda in Curtis, Washington, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Linda?
I'm actually in Buckley.
Okay. I'll fix that. So what's your question?
Well, I have a question about a video I saw with Mark Pocan. Ro Connor, where he was explaining why he wasn't going to invalidate Trump's election. And he said it was because of the will of the people. So my question is, does Pocan think that Trump was a normal candidate, and is he a normal president?
Thank you. Congressman?
Linda, it's kind of easy to, sorry, but he's anything but normal, right? This guy is breaking every precedent of any president, being a leader of a country and not just worrying about himself. Donald Trump is a narcissist. He wants to enrich himself and empower himself. He wants to be an authoritarian leader. He's empowering other authoritarians around the world because he likes that style of leadership. And at the end of the day, he's going to steal money and rip off the American people, the middle class, and those who are poorest, in order to enrich himself and Elon Musk and other people like him. So is that normal? I would hope not. Anything but.
Yeah. Diane in Atlanta, Georgia, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom, and Rep Pocan. Yes, I was just going to mention that is a good idea about the labor groups being there on protests. When I went there on Monday, now that was brought up, I saw no labor at all. And last time I protested was years ago in the 90s, and every time any issue, they would always be there. And I can't blame that black man for being angry right now. I can't blame him at all. Not all white people. I know he doesn't want to hear that. I'm not even talking to my family right now. My husband's not really talking to his much. And that's no boo-hoo for me. It is what it is. But, there are other people that will fight with you. I plan on protesting again down at the Capitol or going to D.C.
So, Diane, forgive me for, but we have limited time.
Yeah.
So your question is, can Democrats get labor more involved in protests, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Congressman?
Yeah, Diane, I'll tell you, this happens to be one of the things I'm very concerned about as well, because there has not been the national marches that we had the last time Donald Trump was elected. We had the National Women's March, over 200 locations. I think we had 20,000 plus people in the winter in Madison, Wisconsin for the rally. And so far, the only protests have been kind of pop-up ones with very little organization and with hundreds of people, maybe up to 1,000 showing up in Madison. And that, I don't think, sends the same message of those big national ones that everyone participates in. These pop-up ones, we've actually had to make calls one time to figure out who even was putting it together because we couldn't figure that out easily, and that's a problem. So I would hope that some of the national groups that have the most people across the country, Indivisible, Move On, and others, can figure out how to have a day of a national protest to really that everyone can participate in, so that we have tens of thousands of people in Madison, Wisconsin, and hundreds of cities across the country on the same day doing the same thing. But right now we haven't had that yet, and I do think that's lacking, and we need it sooner than later.
Yeah, you're familiar with indivisible.org. Are you familiar with 5050.one?
I am not personally.
This is the group that organized all the big protests on Monday. And their website is 5050, FIFTY.ONE. And it's 50 states, 50 state capitals, one day. And I think that they have another giant national protest scheduled for March, maybe March 15th. But
weekend be really good, right? When everyone can come, because those are when we get tens of thousands of people. And I got to tell you, the visual, at least for Madison, Wisconsin, having 400 or 1,000, I think, which were the last two rallies that they had here in this administration, looked very different than 20,000 people.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Dennis in Lonsdale, Minnesota. We have about a minute. You got a quick question, Dennis, please? Very, very brief.
Yes, I do. Thanks for me on. I have a lot of relatives that live on Social Security alone, and they're staying up at night wondering if they're going to be able to get a check, and what would they do if they don't get it?
Yeah, and Dennis, that's a very good question, because as you start to downsize these administrations, and as DOJ has proved, they have fired multiple groups of people that they didn't mean to. They fired people who work on nuclear missiles, and they didn't mean to, they said. They fired people who are doing research on avian flu, and they said, maybe just don't do things until you know what you're doing. And that's the problem, but they could do things, especially with a government shutdown potentially, that could affect checks when they come out and other timing of things. And that has real life impacts on people. But, Donald Trump and Elon Musk don't care if they don't get a check, because they've got plenty in savings to get by. That's why we have to speak out and fight back, and we have to be heard, especially Republican representatives in Congress and the Senate need to hear from their constituents in this week, because next week could be a vote in the House already.
So in your opinion, calling 202-224-3121 and speaking specifically to your Republican representatives is a critical thing right now?
Absolutely, and leaving the message you can't talk directly.
There you go. Congressman, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure having you on. We look forward to this. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Yeah, thank you, Derek.
Yeah. We're hitting the top of the hour. On the other side of the break, Michael Tomasky with the New Republic will be with us, and after that, my Daily Take. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms and our fields, our streets and our sewers, our bodies and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until, at last, we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits, in that secret, a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. Punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it. The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about health care and health finance. They are different. Healthcare is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Healthcare is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Healthcare is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate health care has convinced us that some people deserve health care and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us or could ever keep us from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty, while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer healthcare, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide healthcare to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest healthcare program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single-payer is demonstrably sound and imminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. I believe this nation owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of healthcare. I believe this healthcare is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are healthcare. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer healthcare is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single-payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people, and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18, and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. Did you know that the United States is joining an international fascist network? Michael Tomasky is on the line with us. He's the editor of the New Republic, newrepublic.com. His Twitter handle, mtomasky, or at New Republic. And on Blue Sky, mjtoma.bsky.social, or also at newrepublic.com. And Michael, welcome back. Your op-ed here, it's titled J.D. Vance's Debacle in Germany Exposes MAGA's Sinister Global Endgame, which was also published over on the New Republic's Substack page, newrepublic.substack.com. Absolutely brilliant. I don't think most Americans are thinking in these terms or understanding what's really going on here. You want to lay this out for us?
Sure, and thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Tom. When I saw that the sitting vice president of the United States went over to Germany, and during election season, they're having their legislative elections next Sunday, made two conspicuous moves. Number one, he decided not to meet with the sitting chancellor. All right, I guess we've seen that sort of thing happen before. But number two, he did meet with one party leader. He met with the leader of AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, the neo-Nazi party, the fascist party. In other words, the vice president of the United States, in our name, your name and mine, and everybody tuning into this show, lent the imprimatur of the government of the United States of America to a fascist party competing in an election. Everybody just has to grasp what that means. I mean, that would be, some emissary of Roosevelt, or I guess of J. Edgar Hoover, going over to Germany in the middle of 1932 and meeting with Hitler or something like that. Plug in your example. There have been plenty of fascist regimes through history. It doesn't have to be about Hitler. But it's astonishing and it's breathtaking and it's appalling. And if you combine that with what apparently is happening in Saudi Arabia right now, which is that Trump and Putin are talking about how to split up Ukraine, just the mere fact that they're there without Zelensky, and that Trump is saying these things that he said yesterday, that Zelensky started this war, and he doubled down today by saying this just happened, this just broke. He called Zelensky a dictator. That just happened this morning. It's the United States. I can't put it more plainly than I put it in the piece. The United States is joining a global fascist cabal.
And it seems to me, Michael, that this is not your old Nazi party. I mean, there's an awful lot that is shared. The hate, the anti-Semitism, the racism, the authoritarianism. But we've got a whole new collection of philosopher kings here in the United States, the Curtis Yarvins of the world, who are laying out this notion that democracy has failed, that it's time to replace it, that we need to get over our dictator phobia. We need to have a CEO for America rather than a president. And it looks to me like that's exactly what Trump and Vance have in mind.
Trump and Vance and, of course, Elon Musk, who fancies himself, I think, the CEO of America. And Trump and Musk gave that interview with Sean Hannity last night, of course, when they reiterated a lot of these points. Yeah, this is what they have in mind. And this school of thought has existed on the right for a long time. It existed on the fringe right that nobody paid attention to 40, 50 years ago. But it has slowly gained currency. And through places like the Claremont Institute, most notably. And we ran a great piece about the Claremont Institute by a journalist named Catherine Stewart. If anybody is interested in this history, you can Google Catherine Stewart, New Republic, Claremont Institute. And there have been other terrific pieces about Claremont as well. And it's not just Claremont, there are other places that are, that argue that we are in or need to be in a post-democracy phase, that democracy ran its course. But is no longer suitable or desirable. And, that's where we are. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No, it's pretty clear that that's what Trump and company believe.
Yeah, absolutely. You were one of the first to be so explicit about the United States moving in this direction. You ran a cover before the election of Trump as Hitler, essentially. And I know that you got some crap for that, but it seems to me like you were prescient. We just had a congressman on who essentially said that the elected Democrats, believe that the way to message this right now, at least for the next week, because next week the Republicans are going to vote on this reconciliation package to give Donald Trump and Elon Musk a $4.5 trillion tax break, that the way to message this is that this is, billionaire people's money, and that we all need to activate around that. I'm arguing that it's much larger than that. These guys actually are taking our government apart, and I believe they're doing it on behalf of Vladimir Putin. I realize I may be an outlier here, but I'm curious your thoughts on where we're at and how much destruction has already happened to our government as a result of these philosophies or just this naked theft, this greed, whichever, whether, Congressman Pocan's right or whether I am. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I agree with you on the substance. I'm not certain about the Putin part. but they are certainly trying to take the government apart. I don't think there's any question about that. Probably Mark Pocan and most Democrats agree with that too. The question that confronts the Democrats, of course, is what they should emphasize, what they should say, what they should upplay, and what they should downplay in how they go about fighting this. You know, it's not clear, alas, that talk about democracy and fascism and authoritarianism make that much difference to that many people. I just checked shortly before we started talking Trump's approval rating on 538. It's held steady. It was 50% the week he was sworn in, and today it's 49. Now the disapproval has gone up, which is encouraging. And the disapproval the first week he was in office was 41, and today it's 46. So he's gone from an 8-point advantage to a 3-point advantage, but he stayed at 49 through all of this. So what on earth is going to make that number drop? You know, I don't know. I don't think the Democrats, I share in the general criticism of the Democrats. I think some of it is over the top, but I think in general, they certainly haven't found their footing, and they haven't found ways to be effective, most of them, and really break through this difficult media environment, and they have to do that. But you know, at the same time, Trump is, you know, he's holding steady in approval, and but it'll break, but you know.
Well, I think it isn't isn't part of the problem that democracy is essentially an abstraction for most people. In fact, for most Americans, it probably just means, hey, I get to you know, vote in an election every 2 years, and but pardon me, I'm wondering how large. Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
Large is this international fascist network that you're arguing America is becoming part of right now?
Well, let's see. It's Russia. It's Hungary. It's, I guess, Turkey, Egypt. I don't know if all these things are explicitly fascist, but you know, authoritarian or right populist, right?
Right.
Let's just call it that.
Right.
The countries I named: Egypt, Argentina, El Salvador. I'm sure there's some others I'm forgetting. It's not a huge number of countries, but it's some big countries and some important countries, and it's just the kind of coalition, if you will, or axis that the United States just used to be automatically the leader against.
Right. It seems that in many of these countries, I mean, you know, back in, I forget the year, when Putin was bombing the crap out of Aleppo, and you know, when right after the Arab Spring, and there was the uprising against Bashar al-Assad. You had some 5 million Syrians, and not just Syrians, of course. There were also Libyans and Tunisians and others fleeing into southern Europe, and then, you know, traveling through Europe. Germany took in 1 million, famously, refugees, mostly brown-skinned Muslims. And now it seems that, just like here in the United States, empowering women and black people, by and large, through, quote, DEI, and here in the United States, and all of these brown-skinned refugees in Europe are just, you know, there's just like major right-wing fascist, white supremacist freakout that appears to me to be driving most of this embrace of neo-fascism in the West. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's anti-immigrant and anti-multicultural sentiment that is driving all of this at bottom. It manifests itself in a lot of other ways and results in opposition to a lot of other things. But that really, I think, at bottom is what it's about. That's what, you know, that's what's animating AfD, of whom we spoke earlier. That's what's animating the National Front in France and Le Pen. I think they changed their name to something. I can't remember what it is. Mm-hmm. That's what's driving UKIP, Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom, and UKIP. I've seen some polls where they're ahead of the Tories.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is this is all the white fright freak out. It's just incredible. Michael Tomasky is the editor of the New Republic, newrepublic.com, also newrepublic.substack.com. Be sure to check that out, and you can subscribe. It's absolutely free. Michael, always great talking with you. Thanks so much, and keep writing the great stuff.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Good talking to you. It's 17, almost 18 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So does Putin own Trump? We'll talk about that right after this. And welcome back, Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. My question is about all these federal agencies where Musk and his people are having access. Why don't these agencies file for restraining orders preventing these Musk and his people from getting access there? And the only way they can get in is with a court order. I don't understand why they haven't done that.
Because the executive branch controls these agencies, and the executive branch is just fine with this. It would have to be the president or an agent of the president who would file that kind of a restraining order. The courts can't independently act.
The federal courts are already ruling in favor of democracy, and they are ruling saying that they cannot do this. So following up that, they could apply for restraining orders, don't you think?
No, the question is who would have the standing to ask for that restraining order, and it would have to be the head of one of these agencies, or somebody higher up in the food chain in the executive branch. And all of those people are in on it with Trump and Musk.
Even in the agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're the head of one of these agencies that Musk is going after, and you don't go along with this, you're out.
Well, the woman from the Social Security Administration, the left, she was Musk and his people from coming in. She could easily apply for a restraining order.
Not on behalf of the agency, she couldn't, and on behalf of herself, they wouldn't issue it.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. She just, she would not have the authority to do that. She'd be cut off at the knees by the White House. Great question, Alfredo. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But it has to do with, issues of standing. Thank you for the call. Jeremiah in Coalport, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jeremiah, what's on your mind today?
You're just talking about a strategy that with your guest, strategy about the Democrats can use with this reconciliation bill. And why aren't the Democrats pointing out that it's going to disproportionately affect poor people, and that's unchristian, and that this unchristian man did not put his hand on the Bible when he was sworn into office, and for bonus points, say that he's the Antichrist, and if he did so, he would burst into flames. I mean, these are extreme times, Tom. Extreme times call for extreme measures.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Donald Trump may well be the Antichrist, or at least the embodiment of the values of the Antichrist in our modern time. And he certainly, falls in with being the deceiver, among other things. But I don't, I don't think the fact that he didn't put his hand on the Bible or anything. These fundamentalist Christians, they don't care if he's a Christian or not. They call him Cyrus. Cyrus was a Iranian king, a Persian king, who sheltered the Jews.
Pull off one or two,
maybe. I'm skeptical. I'm real skeptical. And the poor, you started out by saying, why don't we point out that, starving the poor is unchristian. The poor have never polled well in the United States. LBJ was able to get, the Great Society through in large part just because he had a huge majority. But people don't stand up to fight for poor people in America. They never have, and frankly, I doubt they ever will. Jeremiah, thanks for the call. I share your sentiments. I really do. Thank you. We'll be right back. It is 22 minutes past the hour. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them.
Trump steps up, the cameras roll, he points and lays the blame. Says the press is out to get him, playing a rigged game. Fake news, the facts, they're enemies of me. But silencing the truth is how you kill democracy. Donald Trump is crushing the media, tearing down the light, turning facts to fiction, hiding wrong from right. Calls them traitors, calls them liars, bends the story fast. When the truth gets buried, it echoes from the past.
Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. My op-ed today over at Hartmann Report and also published over on Raw Story is titled, Does Putin Own Trump? It's fairly long because I have all these examples, from the Mueller report, all the hundreds of contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia back in 2016, the fact that Paul Manafort ran Trump's campaign and he was a guy who worked for Putin or Putin's oligarchs. The lies about Russian contacts that Mike Flynn told the FBI. It just goes on and on and on. All of the money laundering stuff, the money that Trump was taking from Russian oligarchs. I can't come up with an explanation for what Trump is doing to Ukraine right now, and frankly, what he is doing to the United States of America with Elon Musk, that makes any more sense than that Trump and Putin and Musk hate America and want to destroy this country and our democracy. I get it that these guys are greedy billionaires and they're motivated by money and they're trying to rip us all off and all that kind of thing. I get that, and Democrats should certainly raise hell with that message. And Mark Pocan is absolutely right. Everybody needs to be calling their Republican representatives and saying, "How dare you plan a week from now on voting next week on voting to give another $4 trillion tax break to billionaires while you're cutting all these services to average working people across America?" Completely agree with that. We need to do that. But I think this is much larger. I think Vladimir Putin owns Donald Trump. I think Russia has owned Trump since the 80s, or at least he's been Russia adjacent since the 80s. I think he's been in Putin's orbit probably since his first, one of his beauty pageants over there, where he was, according to the Steele dossier, and who knows, hiring a couple of hookers to pee on the bed where Barack and Michelle Obama slept, that kind of thing. I doubt it's a PP tape, frankly. My guess is it has more to do with tens or maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars that Russian oligarchs laundered through Trump properties. Real estate is the number one way that dirty money gets laundered these days, particularly oligarch money. And I think also that Putin owns Trump because he helped him get elected in 2016, and he reminds him of that at every opportunity. You're my man, I made you. And you wouldn't want me to release the files on how we helped you out, how we helped you become president. What a traitor you are, would you? Oh, no, sir. Oh, no. Yes, I'll screw Ukraine on your behalf. I mean, Trump came out just a few hours ago and called Zelensky a dictator and said that he was ruling without elections and, was never elected, implying he was never elected. The guy was elected at a free and fair election, and then his country got invaded. Does Putin own Trump? I think so. And I think we need to be, looking into this. I would like to see our media start asking that question. I don't know if you caught Rachel Maddow last night. Every time Putin comes up as a topic, Trump starts getting, like stuttering and looking away and getting freaked out.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I think Putin put his hand around his neck in Helsinki, and it's been, Katie bar the door ever since. I'll be back with your calls on the other side of the break. What say you?
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Mark Charles and Soon Chan Ra. This is from chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Mark, said this almost under my breath as I walked past a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and approached the group of men dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. Suck it up, was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice, I said to the people, you cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human. Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. You are not welcome here, he said as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the inappropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. A white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. It is the primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination that shaped the European colonial settler worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, qualities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit." End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Doomed verses would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual slavery. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese took these ecclesiastical statements to heart and perpetrated the slave trade from the African continent to the European and the American continents. As a Christian ruler, the King of Portugal would have power endowed from the church to take possession of the other as slave labor from the continent of Africa. The pagan African body was just another commodity to be taken for the pleasure and profit of the European Christian body, the one most full of God. In the January of 1454, Pope Nicholas authored another bull. The book is Unsettling Truths by Charles and Ra.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
In the shadows of the Kremlin's might, a deal was struck beneath the night. Whispers echo of a secret tie between the power and the spy. Does Putin own Trump? The question stands, a puppet dancing on Russian strands in the corridors where secrets seep. The truth lies buried dark and deep. From Helsinki stage to whispered calls, a leader bends, another enthralls. Sanctions lifted, alliances frayed, a nation's trust begins to fade. Does Putin own Trump? The question stands, a puppet dancing on Russian strands in the corridors where secrets seep. The truth lies buried dark and deep.
Welcome back. 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Gar in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
How you doing today, Tom?
Fine, thank you. What's up, Gar?
What got me interested in your program is your books, how you read books. I'm an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
I was browsing through the library a couple of days ago and ran into a book called Facing Suicide by James Berry. You should get him on your show. And he's talking about 45,000 Americans kill themselves a year. In 2022, 52,000 Americans kill themselves. And say for every one attempt, there's 10 that was unsuccessful. And women try to commit suicide 4 times more than men, but more men die from suicide because women are not as successful.
Right.
Men usually shoot themselves.
Yep. I'm familiar
And
with all
what
that.
blew me
What's your point?
away, the point that I'm trying to make is how come we're not addressing it? And he talked about it. We should be addressing it like COVID.
Mm-hmm.
This should be like COVID.
Yeah.
But he said we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, COVID killed, 20 or 30 times more people than suicide. But I agree with you, Gar. Suicide. My best friend, when I was a teenager in high school, committed suicide. It was horrible. I mean, and he shot himself, and it just made a mess of his bedroom.
And it says it affects 135. One suicide affects 135 people, member of their family or a friend.
No, I can.
Or one of their children.
I can testify.
And you need to get him on your program. This book is, and you know who has the solutions? Who's coming up with the solutions? The Air Force. That's what blew me away too.
What's their solution?
The Air Force is coming up.
What's their
I didn't
solution?
really get into the solutions, but they're coming up with the solutions how to recognize suicide.
Yeah. Well, recognizing suicidal ideation. I get it. Gar, thanks for the call. It's a little off topic here, but thanks for the call. Ardeen in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Hey, Ardeen, what's up?
Hi, I was just calling. I heard the speaker this morning, and I was wondering about this. I'm a senior. I'm on Social Security, main income. I did a little things on the side. But I was wondering, I'm on survival benefits.
SSI?
I worked. Huh? Yeah. Well, is that all the acronyms I get totally.
Yeah.
It's like, let's see, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was on my husband's, I had to get off early because I was his paid caregiver. So I had to take early Social Security at 62. And then I had, when he passed away, I called Social Security, and they froze my account. They did it. It scared me half to death. It's like I had no money at all. But I survived and all that. But it took a couple of weeks for them to get it straightened out. And they said, I have survivor benefits now. Now, is that what they're talking about when they're saying dead people are collecting? Are these the people that do not call and say, hey?
The problem is that the COBOL programming language, which is what Social Security's software is written in, it's a language from the 60s.
Yeah.
If you don't put a number in, it kicks out, if you don't put a year for somebody's birth into it, if there's an error of some kind, it kicks out an 1857 number or something like that. There's a number that's supposed to be an error code. It's a COBOL error code.
Okay.
But these guys thought that these were birthdays, and because they don't know COBOL and they don't know what they're doing. But you may still be impacted by this because they are laying off people in the Social Security Administration, and those are the people who process claims, who enroll people, and who make sure that the checks get out. So, hang on, Ardeen. It's going to be a wild ride.
I know.
Thanks for the call. Brenda in Houston, Texas. Hey, Brenda, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for taking my call. This is my first time calling. I'm so excited. I can't believe I'm talking to you.
Well, thank you.
But let me dispel your thought of Trump being the Antichrist. No. Antichrist is going to be young, wealthy, articulate, great orator, and very handsome. So all of that knocks Trump out.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's see. Musk is... I believe, I have not liked him when I found out where he was from. And I think he's holding America responsible for the demise of apartheid in his country.
I agree. It was the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, that largely funded the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And I think that's one of the reasons why he took a meat axe to that agency right off the bat. Right.
He's very bitter about that. And that's his thing. And Putin is running this in. He's orchestrating this whole thing with his minions.
I agree.
This whole thing is, and as far as Trump not being an antichrist, I think he's paving the way. I think this is a rehearsal.
Yeah.
God is giving us a rehearsal.
May well be, Brenda. May well be. Thanks for the call. Mark in Chicago. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I guess it's safe to say that all protocol has been broken and all tradition has been broken with what's going on between Trump, Elon Musk, and Republicans. But I'm wondering, since that, why all of the former presidents and vice presidents do a joint address to the country calling this out and calling for a mass, anti what they're doing.
Yeah, revolt, as it were.
I know the traditions.
Mark, I suspect that as long as Trump is polling in the 50% range, that ain't going to happen. When his poll numbers get around 20 or 30%, then probably you're going to see some people growing his spine, including some Republicans. But right now, he's enormously popular, and his base loves what he's doing, and because it hasn't affected them yet. They're going to, F around and find out, I suspect, but, it's going to be a while. Mark, thanks for the call. Billy in New York City. Hey, Billy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for the work that you do. You are a national treasure.
Thank you,
I was driven to the first time calling. I was driven to call after your conversation with the congressman, where I was stunned. They really don't get it. You've got it absolutely right. Me and my partner with political stuff, we've done some work for the party, and we did research on the roots of the right-wing stuff, and it won't surprise you to find out that that today's GOP and the Nazis have the same roots, coming back from 1937. In any event, it's clear that the congressman does not realize the big picture. What these people are about is about undoing the regulatory state.
Correct.
Yeah, they'd love to make some money, but that's not what it's about. And I was stunned that he really doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Just two more very quick things. I would prefer to hear, say, whites only instead of DEI. A lot of people don't even know what DEI means, and I think that Trump will be gone after 6 months because they've got Vance in there ready to take over, and he can take orders, and Trump is too unpredictable. One last thing, if you could connect me with your person directly, after this, there's something that I would love you to take a look at, and keep up the great work, and I'll get off the phone.
Okay, Billy, I'll put you on hold here. Billy's on line 4, Jeremy, although Jeremy's talking to somebody right now. He might not be able to hear me. But, I think that they're trying to disassemble the regulatory state, too. And that's what created the middle class. The American middle class is a result of the regulatory state. And, enough said, I suppose. Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Well, I'm right with the previous caller. I was trying to wait and talk to Congressman Pocan because it's almost a repeat from last week. I mean, I have a ton of respect for him, but and I think a lot of us out here is why we are so frustrated with the Democratic leadership. We are seeing our democracy destroyed, and he's talking about tax cuts. And I get it. In normal times, he'd be absolutely right, and of course, even now, it's a huge priority. But priority one is our democracy, and what I wanted to ask him about, and with the work that Greg Palast has done, I just don't get why the Democratic Party why they're not screaming about the amount of people removed from voting rolls. And now that Musk has the ability, all our information, they can even do more of a surgical dive to remove people from voting rolls. So and that's a huge if, we have midterms, they can pretty much assure themselves that they'll maintain power. Yeah. And the Democratic Party, for some reason, they're crickets on this, and I don't understand why. And
I think it's that the people who are doing strategy for the Democrats realize that for most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, saying our democracy is at risk is meaningless. They don't understand it. They don't. It's an abstraction. What does that mean, right? Our democracy's at risk. Well, yeah, I can still vote. I can speak out loud against Trump if I want, and they won't get it until it's way too late. But what Americans can understand is that there's a bunch of rich people who are trying to friggin' rob you, and that's the message that they want to amplify this next week, because next week they're going to have the vote on the reconciliation bill. So, that may well be a very good political strategy at it. It might be. But I also think that they should be pointing out that Trump has aligned himself with Putin, and that's treason.
Yeah, and I get it that they're not being in power. The Democratic Party is limited, but they still can use political theater, and they won't do it. You had the caller about the hand on the Bible. If that would have been, I've told you this before, if that would have been Kamala Harris, they'd be playing that all the way through the midterms.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it'd make its way to public television.
You're absolutely right. And you know, Congressman Pocan just came from giving a speech in Madison, you know, in front of the state capitol. So God bless him. I mean, he's out there doing it. But so many of them are not. Ed, thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news. Back with your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Peter in Lawton, Oklahoma. Hey, Peter, what's up?
I'm looking at a book I got on the shelf, and it says The Plot to Seize the White House by Jules Archer. And what now?
Oh, that was from 1935.
Yep, 33.
33, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And they had the hearings in 1935. It was the Dick Stein McCormick hearings, and most of it was behind closed doors, and then they buried all the information in the
Roosevelt shut that down. He did not want America to know that there was an attempt on his life.
Yeah, well, Roosevelt also knew that he had all the people involved he was going to need to win World War II.
Yeah.
Because they own the corporations. But it took the BBC 50 years later to dig up the information and make it public. And in fact, the BBC made a great documentary. But what scares me, I mean, what frightens me or whatever, everything that was planned back in 33 to turn the U.S. into a fascist dictatorship is now happening. It's clear. I mean,
yeah.
And also, going back to Project 2025, that was written in 1980 with the Koch Libertarian Presidential Platform. There's a meme on Google that lists everything that was to be abolished, you know, like the FBI, DOJ, SSI, FDA, and all that. And what makes me angry about the Democratic Party, I've sent copies of this for the last 10 years to every major person in the Democratic Party. And now, you would think they'd get up there during the conventions and put that billboard up there. This is what they planned in 1980, and make the people aware of what these people are trying to do.
It was David Koch's platform.
No, but they won't do it. It's like they're afraid, or they think there's no more than what the people out here in the street. People, if they see something up in front of them, said this was their plan in 1980, and it's happening now. I just don't understand the people behind the Democrat.
Yeah.
But I do know this. The leadership of the Democratic Party ignore local politics. We opened a Democrat headquarters, first one in 40 years, permanent headquarters here in Lawton, Oklahoma. And then that 6-month period, we called 21,000 people, independents and Democrats, let them know we were open. It's still open, by the way.
Good on you, Peter.
And we sent all kinds of information to the DNC, say, you know, please send somebody out here so we can kind of get in the media and get in the news. Not one person showed up for the grand opening.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, you know, the Jamie Harrison, the previous head of the DNC, and the guy behind, the two guys before him, all of them were all about husbanding resources and raising money from big donors and focusing on races we can win. And I think that's all wrong. I think, you know, Howard Dean had it right in 2008 with his 50-state strategy that got Barack Obama into the White House. And we need a 50-state strategy. And hopefully Ken, what's his last name? Martin. Ken, thank you, Sean. Ken Martin is going to do that. I mean, you know, he's talking like that.
Oh, I'm glad. You know, I probably get 25, 30 texts a day wanting money.
Yeah. But don't ever give money to anybody who sends you a text message. 9 out of 10 of them are scams. Never, ever, ever give money as a result of a text message. Peter, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you. It's 9 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Juliana Moore, who's I've had lunch with, came out with a new book about freckles.
Pentagon's trembling, the generals shake. A freckled-faced menace is raising the stakes. She's got a book, oh Lord, what a kids that their skin is okay to be in. Freckle-faced strawberry is coming for you. Oh.
And it was banned by the Pentagon.
Normal. What will we do?
It's amazing. This book was banned by the Pentagon.
She's packing a message more deadly than lead. Self-acceptance. My God, we're better off dead. Freckle-faced strawberry is coming for you.
53 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Yeah, Juliana Moore. Louise and I had lunch with her, many years ago. She had a friend who was running an ADHD program in New York City. Anyhow, Annette in Waldorf, Maryland. Hey, Annette, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. It's so nice to talk with you, and I just want you to know I really appreciate the work you do in your show.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I've been hearing a lot about the Democrats and what they're not doing. People are making suggestions on what they should do in order to kind of combat some of the things that are being thrown at us, you know, with workers being laid off, Russian interference, and the checks and balances of the government being just basically tossed out of the window. So in light of all of that happening at this particular moment, I'm wondering, the State of the Union is coming up soon. So I think it would be a good idea if all the Democrats just got together and just decided not to show up. So I just want your opinion on that idea.
I'm ambivalent about it, Annette. I think if they don't show up, then they sacrifice their ability to, you know, sit stone-faced, you know, in the face of lies or even yell back. I'm guessing that they will show up, and I think probably they should. But I get what you're saying. I mean, you know, we need some performance art here. We need some serious resistance. So I'm with you on that. Annette, I have to move along. Thanks for the call. Fred in Spring, Texas. Hey, Fred, what's up?
Oh, hi, Tom. First of all, I love your rational mind. So this morning I read your article about the Trump-Putin relationship, and I just wanted to give an alternate theory that makes sense to me. It's simply that Trump is a useful idiot. Trump doesn't trust democratically elected leaders, largely because he's fitting some facts to his mistrust, the facts of the trade deficits.
So you think Putin's whispering in his ear and getting him to believe these things?
Well, no, I think he believes it at the get-go, before Putin talks to him. Yeah. Putin then agrees with him. He's telling him what he wants to hear. That more or less gets him on his side. Yeah. And Putin, we're not in any military alliances with Putin, so we can't take advantage of him that way. Our trade with him is relatively small, so that element of it isn't there. And of course, I think there's a psychological factor that Putin has helped him. He helped him get elected. So, you know, I think all the factors are there to make Trump lend a sympathetic ear to Putin. Putin tells him what he wants to hear, and he believes him. So he has his credibility. So he believes the Putin perspective with respect to Ukraine, right?
Yeah. I'll bet that Putin is also flooding Truth Social with the memes that he wants Trump to believe. You know.
Oh sure. Oh yeah.
Fraud and waste in the American government, dismantle it. You know, Zelensky took $500 billion in U.S. aid when it was actually $53 billion or $54 billion. You know, I mean,
I'm sure he got the number from Putin.
Oh yeah, and whether it was directly from a phone call or whether it was Putin's bots, you know, repeating it over and over and over and over again on Truth Social and X, and then Musk, of course, you know, platforming these people and amplifying their messages and all that.
Well, anyway, I just want to say, so what I like about this theory, it really focuses on the fact that Trump is stupid.
Yeah.
First and foremost, he's stupid and easily taken advantage of.
I get that. And clearly the Russians concluded that back in the 80s.
Fred, thank you for the call. I mean, you know, how stupid do you have to be to lose basically $1 billion that you inherit from your father and that you stole from your siblings and nephews and nieces? We'll be back on the other side of the break with Dean Obeidallah. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today's book in our Thom Hartmann book club here is Resist, How a Century of Young Black Activists Shaped America by a Nigerian-American reporter, Rita Omoka. And this is from the introduction. It's titled African, American. I am African. I am American. Nigeria made me. Black America raised me. My roots dig deep in Nigerian soil, while America has nourished my branches for more than 2 decades. Yet the fruit I bear holds the essence of both lands. Like a tree whose sons, my identity defies simple categorization. It's a unique blend, a testament to the richness of embracing intertwined belonging. I belong to the Edo people. That's one of the hundreds of vibrant tribes that make up the rich mosaic of Nigeria. Though we share similar features, our identities are deeply infused by our ethnicity, dialects, and unique tribal customs. Our belief systems, Christianity, Islam, and other traditional religions, coexist, shaping our perspectives and enriching our communities. And while colorism permeates, the concept of race, as understood elsewhere, simply doesn't hold the same weight. Yet in the United States, my identity has been defined by this uniquely American construct of race. Those physical characteristics of skin, color, hair, facial features are prominent. My tribe holds no value. Despite this flawed framework, I've since come to wholly embody Nigerian American. I favor that designation because it pays homage to the 2 distinct individualities that make me, me. For years, though, those 2 identities felt at odds, at once fraught yet covetous of each other, as though pledging allegiance to one meant disregard for the other. Throughout, I never understood nor appreciated my American blackness the way I could have. A surrogate one, yes, but still there's a belonging there that I neglected. For black immigrants, I'd assume this is true for most immigrants, our identity in America of just being black without a sense of cultural home within that identity presents myriad confusions. In Nigeria, I am not a black girl. I'm not a black anything. I am my mother's last born child and only daughter
from Benin City in the southern region of Nigeria, just 250 miles south of the country's capital city, Abuja. I am the granddaughter of an unlettered woman who rose to run a small business as a local Guinness and Coca-Cola distributor. I am not this color America relegated me to. This is what I've struggled with all these years, having one foot in and out of America's definition of who I am. Having one foot in and out of the many groups I find myself in, constantly toggling between three worlds: Black America, white America, and my Nigerian culture. Contending with this skin so problematic in America, skin that in Nigeria is synonymous with endless striving in a pursuit of excellence, I come from a history full of it. The stories our ancestors passed down to us were of kings and queens, colonization be damned. Stories of flourishing in gold and oil and gemstones. Academically and professionally, the grind for achievement was instilled in us because everyone strives for the same caliber of achievement. To go from a country full of this to one stripped of it for racially black people doesn't quench our thirst for progress or success. Many foreigners to America see what feels innate to the native. That newness breeds prospect and appreciation. Immigrants gravitate toward the idea that America carries out a true democracy. Though a marred one, it is better than none or fascism. Like many immigrants, Mom came to this country in 1992, wide-eyed, and gazed upon its endless feast of opportunities and upward mobility, concluding that America provides for those who work hard. Fleeing from a corrupt government with lawlessness and instability, she quickly adopted this nation as a means of survival. And for some time, it all seemed so simple. When my brothers and I joined Mom in the South Bronx in 1995, her vision of America became ours, too. She charged us with representing our heritage exceptionally well. There's a Nigerian saying in our pidgin English, Naija no de carry last, which means Nigerians should never come in last place. That was Mom's core message to us: persevere and succeed. Race, racism, and the like were never discussed. They were never factors in our quest of American success. Our goal was to be ambitious and unwavering in our pursuit, even if it meant inadvertently ignoring America's complex history. By coming to America, we unknowingly became part of the Black American community. Though racially similar, there were deeply rooted differences between them and us. It's those generational and lived experiences that have long divided us. Their history of brutal oppression is one that we Black immigrants don't have, and one I didn't understand. It remains the wedge and genesis of tensions between Black Americans and Black immigrants. For the Black American, there's the endless fight to be equal to whites politically and economically. And for the Black immigrant, there's the romanticized view of America as a place of limitless opportunities. The book by Rita Omaka is Resist: How a Century of Young Black Activists Shaped America.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us, our buddy and my colleague, Dean Obeidallah, the legendary host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, weekdays 6 to 9 p.m. right here on SiriusXM Progress Radio Channel 127. He's got a brilliant regular newsletter. It's called The Dean's Report on Substack. It is free. You need to sign up for it. Dean says some of the smartest stuff out there. DeanObeidallah.substack.com, or just go to substack.com and in the search box, just plug in Dean's Report. It'll pop right up. And Dean, welcome back to the program. I loved your last, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, saying that you have filed a Freedom of Information request. Tell us about this.
Trump, well, let's put it this way. When Elon Musk came to power, not Donald Trump, when Elon Musk came to power, he's being investigated by more than 30 different investigations going on, 11 different agencies, from the FAA, the Security Exchange Commission, to the Consumer Finance Protection Board. All these investigations going on when Trump gets sworn in. And when I saw numerous articles posing questions about what's the status of these investigations. Even the New York Times did a great job detailing the investigations. So what I did is made a Freedom of Information Act request and sent it to all these agencies to find out the status of the investigations. And the point is, Tom, has Trump shut them down? Or have the agencies on their own said, okay, Elon Musk is president, let's shut the investigations down, let's close the file, let's put it in the storeroom, let's dismiss the charges, whatever it is. So that's my point. And I plan to write articles based on what I hear from these various agencies. But there's some serious stuff here. Securities Exchange Commission for stock fraud, from over 300 complaints about Tesla, about not just the car, but about financing issues that were raised by people, to the FAA, fining him over $600,000, seeking $600,000 plus from him for SpaceX. And where are those? What happened that? If that's dismissed, are they letting him go on that? We need to know the answers to show even more of the corruption of this oligarchy.
Well, and then there's the secondary question, or maybe even the primary question. Did Musk put $270 million into getting Donald Trump elected, and whatever he and Donald Trump joked about with regard to the voting machines in Pennsylvania, did he do that specifically for this reason? Is that the only reason that he's doing all this stuff? It's not Curtis Yarvin or some, weird mad monk philosopher who says that we should replace democracy with autocracy. It's that Elon Musk is looking for a fig leaf, an excuse to shut down, a bunch of investigations into, every one of his companies was under investigation, and some of these investigations could produce really serious damage to him and his companies. And, it sure looks to me like he's succeeded in shutting them all down.
Look, he was just about to go with Deutsche to investigate the Securities Exchange Commission. To give people a little quick primer on that one, when Elon Musk was buying Twitter, it was a publicly traded company. If you acquire 5% of any publicly traded company, you have to report, you're obligated by the Securities Exchange Commission Act to report to the public that you've done this. And he didn't on purpose because it would have driven the stock price up. So he was able to buy Twitter for a ridiculous amount, but actually lower than perhaps he would have had to pay. And
right, it saved him billions of dollars, him and the Saudis.
And the SEC is looking for disgorgement of profits and other civil penalties. Is that gone? We don't know. That's my whole point. So I think, Tom, I don't know Elon Musk. What we do know of him is that he wants to make more money because the wealthy always want to make more money. It's insatiable appetite for wealth and for power. So Elon Musk wants to get rid of any investigations, to make more money, and rule the world. Because, Tom, he's not an American. He's a U.S. citizen, yes. He is a guy who wants to run Germany, France, the UK, the United States. He wants to take the apartheid system he grew up in and make that the system here. Just today he was tweeting about how white people in South Africa are being treated so horribly by black people. He is fueling discontent. He is trying to incite violence. He did it against the judges who ruled against him early on in his cases that they're dealing with the executive orders against Donald Trump. He's very dangerous, like mini Trump, but even more dangerous. His aspirations go way beyond the boundaries of our nation. He's a dangerous person. He's a cancer to democracy.
How do you, well, first of all, what's the status of your FOIA filings? How does that work?
Well, for some of them, I got an instant response, like, here is your case number. I think it was auto set up. A few, the FAA actually called me yesterday and said, you have to file with the DOT, Department of Transportation, because they're underneath that. So I go to the DOT website, and while it's easy on most websites to file a FOIA request, this one, it had to generate a certain code for me, and it wouldn't do it. So it looks like I'm stuck doing a letter to them, which I will do. Another agency responded saying it was to the wrong place that someone else is handling, but they were nice enough to say we're going to forward it. So look, it could be weeks, it could be months. I actually get some response, but whatever I get, I will write about it and share it. And I hope others, the New York Times, Washington Post, and other places are doing the same thing. Stay on top of this. If the investigation is all shut down, it is more quid pro quo. It is, you gave me $270 million, now I'm getting rid of all the investigations into you. This is corruption. It is brazen corruption, Tom. In the Gilded Age, they'd be embarrassed by how brazen this is.
Yeah, this goes beyond William Cooper in Montana, or Teapot Dome. What was his name? Albert Fell, or Fall, I believe, was the Secretary of the Navy under Silent Cal, under Calvin Coolidge. Who took the bribe for the Teapot Dome gas storage. I mean, that was Piker stuff, and that nearly brought down the Coolidge administration. I mean, this is just, I agree, it's just absolutely massive. Dean, I'm curious your thoughts on. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk with you about, actually. First off, I'm curious your thoughts on my assertion that that Putin owns Trump, that there's no other rational explanation for Trump selling out Ukraine. What am I missing?
I think you're right. And I read your newsletter, and I was nice of you to say nice things about my newsletter. And if you're listening and not subscribing to the Hartmann Report, go subscribe. I read it every single day, and then I steal ideas from my show. No, I don't do that. I get smarter by reading it. Look, I think we all know that Donald Trump had an affinity to Vladimir Putin from years and years ago. And let's remind everybody, in the Mueller report, it was very clear Putin helped Donald Trump win. What they did not find was a coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia, so they couldn't charge anyone in the Trump campaign, but they charged Russians. Trump knows it. He knows Putin's his buddy. I also think, Tom, in a much darker way, that Donald Trump aspires to be an autocrat like Putin, and that if he gets Putin on his side, who's going to stand up to him? If he starts taking parts of Canada or Greenland or Gaza or the Panama Canal, between them, they're like the new axis of evil leaders, and they're going to audition someone else to be their third part to divide up the world. And Tom, if we write about any other country where the leader was doing what Trump did, sides with Vladimir Putin over the people of Ukraine, convicted of felonies for cheating in the 2016 campaign, charged with felonies for cheating in the 2020 campaign, inciting a terrorist attack on our capital, pardoning the terrorists, and now talking about taking other countries, Greenland, Canada, Panama, we'd say the world should watch out because that person's a threat to democracy, and the U.S. should sanction that country led by that person. That's where we are. Take a step back, folks. If you were looking at the outside, what Donald Trump is doing, you'd be saying that nation is a cancer to democracy. It is a threat and should be sanctioned. That's where we are. We're living in a country run by a dangerous person who's going to make us a pariah state on the world stage. That's where we're heading as the United States of America. Instead of the nation that upholds those values, we're going to be the ones that they're going to impose it on us. We might get sanctioned by some of our Western allies going forward.
Yeah. Also, I don't think there's probably very many Americans who would object to people who are here without documentation who have committed crimes. And it's not a crime, by the way, to be here without documentation. It's a civil offense. You get it's like a parking ticket. But people who have committed a crime being deported. But we now know the names of, I believe, 6 people, just based on photographs that were taken, who have been deported to Guantanamo Bay. And 3 of those 6 were not criminals. They had not committed any crime. And I'm just astonished, A, that this is happening, and B, that there hasn't been a more broad and outraged response to the United States reprising this horror show offshore where American law does not apply, on Cuba, for God's sake. And the example it sets to the world, and I'm just blown away by it. I'm curious your take on it all.
This is the example Trump wants to set. He feels very comfortable with the autocrats and following their playbook. Donald Trump is not an isolationist. He's not an isolationist at all. He's an imperialist. He is like Putin. Putin wanted Ukraine, he went into it. Donald Trump keeps saber rattling about taking Canada or Greenland or Panama Canal. We will wake up one day and have U.S. troops or warships surrounding the Panama Canal. It is deeply concerning. And Tom, we've talked about this before. The first group that Hitler put in camps were not the Jews. They were political dissidents. They were people that Hitler viewed as a threat. About 25,000 German citizens who were critics were put in camps within 7 months of Hitler coming to power. That's the first group. Right after the
socialists. It was their equivalent of Bernie Sanders.
Exactly, and who they called communists. But anyone who stood up to, and then there was the blood purge where they actually killed people who were even part of their own movement. Right. They did not feel loyal enough to Donald Trump. Exactly. So he is following that playbook. This is deeply alarming. It is almost surreal, Tom, to read books about autocrats and see it playing out in front of us. We could be, all joking aside, in Guantanamo Bay if he puts dissidents and radio hosts there.
Oh, I know.
Who's going to stand up for it? Who's going to stand up for us? Because you're right, the muted response here emboldens him to go to the next step, which is rounding up U.S. citizens and making up allegations, the idea of suspending habeas corpus, which is in the Constitution in Article 1, in times of invasion and rebellion, that habeas corpus, meaning you could be charged without even having crimes asserted against you, just rounded up and held indefinitely. Donald Trump knows about it. Stephen Miller knows about it. The people he surrounded are bad faith actors. They know Lincoln did it. And
Trump has fantasized about it openly.
This is what this is beyond a red alarm. We're in a place that I can't believe. It is like surreal, Tom. I can't believe where we are. Yeah. We would, another time, we'd seem hyperbolic and almost hysterical. Now I think we're actually too calm for what we're facing because I think we're trying to process it intellectually, and it's very hard.
Well, and this is the big challenge, Dean, and we just have 20 seconds left. But for so many Americans, democracy is an abstraction. How do we break through?
Mm-hmm. All I can do is keep talking about it with you and writing articles and trying to build allies, build community, build alliances beyond your base. Even people on the right who hate Trump or are conservatives, but they're pro-America first, not pro-Trump first. Build allies. We're going through a very difficult time. That's the only thing I advocate.
The Steve Schmitz of the world. Yeah, I totally get it. It's the great Dean Obeidallah, the host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, Monday through Friday, weekdays 6 to 9 p.m. on Sirius Progress, right here, Sirius Progress, XM Progress Channel 127. Be sure to check out his newsletter, his Substack newsletter, Dean's Report, the Dean's Report, easy to find. Dean, again, thank you for dropping by. It's always great.
You're great talking with you.
Thanks, yep. It's 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week right here. I'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Martha in Houston, Texas. Hey, Martha, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to say I 100% agree with you and Dean regarding the fact that the country is under direct threat from Putin, period. And I think, it's good to say that, as Democrats, as Mr. Pocan is saying, that everything is related to making money for Trump and for Elon Musk. However, I think this is a message that is passé. I think the most important thing right now is to grasp exactly what is going on right now. This is not anymore a matter related to just Trump and Elon Musk. This is the entire country that is being kind of invaded by another country. And I think if we put this in as the main message, we would be able to get a lot of Americans around us. There are people who truly are not for our country to be taken over by Putin. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. I suspect that Putin is looking at what Hitler accomplished in Europe before America joined the war and thinking to himself, I can do that. He's taken, this is the fifth country now that he's gone after. He went after South Ossetia, went after Georgia, went after Transnistria, destroyed Chechnya. Of course, that was, already arguably part of Russia. And I'm missing one other. And then, of course, Ukraine. And, I think you said it very well, Martha. And now I think he's coming after America. I really do. Martha, thank you for the call. Joe in Oklahoma City. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Not much, Tom. Great topics, great guests, great information. I did want to say this and this is no hyperbole. We are already in a military coup. We are already
I don't think it's
in
military.
A military coup. The reason I say that is because as the outrage grows and the protests grow...
Oh, the military will come out, yeah.
Pete Hegseth, where some of the people that were in charge before said, hey, Trump, you can't attack your own people. Hegseth will have absolutely no problem rounding up, attacking, brutalizing his fellow citizens.
And imprisoning.
But I do... Oh, of course, because the end goal, the ideology is just a smokescreen. Mm-hmm. He's throwing a little out here for the evangelicals. He's causing the chaos and the pain that the T-maggots love. He's getting ready to give his ungodly rich friends a bunch of money. But at the end of the day, it's about seizing that total power. And you know who took power after Castro died? And that's another water sign and Barron, by the way. But let me just say this. I have the silver bullet. if they will do it. And that is across the nation, across all agencies, a federal workers walk-off. Now, they're firing them anyway. They're going to get rid of a bunch of them. And that is the only power we have
Well,
left.
here's the problem. The unions won't call for it because they saw what happened to Patco. And there's no other way to organize federal workers. So,
the union leaders here in Oklahoma told the teachers not to go on strike, and they put up with tax cuts for 10 years with no pay increase. Then they said, union leaders be damned. They walked off the job.
I get it. We'll see if it happens, Joe. They know I'm fine. We'll see. Thank you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
He came down the escalator, smug and loud. Said it drained the swamp, but he fed the crowd. Lies like a flood, truth on the run. Turn the White House into a loaded gun. Fear and fury, that's his play. Set the match, then walks away. Burn it down and claim no blame, while the people pay for his twisted game. It's shock and awe, a wrecking ball. Break the law, deny it all. Tear it down, watch it fall, then beg for a curtain call. He's got the con, he's running the con.
Welcome back, 24 minutes past the hour. So the White House published a video of people in leg restraints and handcuffs shuffling onto a plane as part of a deportation operation. And they amplified the audio, the sound of these chains on these people. You know, chain, 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 clank, 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 clank. And they posted it to social media with the joke that it was an ASMR video. ASMR is autonomous sensory meridian response. People listen to these sounds to fall asleep to, basically. You know, sounds of, people scratching cardboard with their fingernails or rubbing fur, there's just all these unusual sounds that kind of put people to sleep. The Lincoln Project tweeted, if Hitler had a social media account, they said, this is the dumbest effing person you know is cheering this on, and in the same breath insisting that in Nazi Germany, they wouldn't have been cheering on the SS at the same time. Right. The deputy opinion editor of The Observer, Paige Maston, says, what strikes me most about the Trump administration isn't just the abject cruelty of its policies, but the whole way, the way the whole thing is created. And this is not real life, not a comedy. These are real people they're making a spectacle of. And Joe Steib, an assistant professor of national security at the U.S. Naval War College, said, these people are so utterly disgusting and depraved, I'm tired of being told to empathize with them. Did economic anxiety make them do this racist crap? Yeah, I think so. And now Donald Trump has a new executive order. This one is absolutely wild. He signed it yesterday afternoon, and it says that only the president or the attorney general can speak for, quote, what the law is in the United States. Now, that's a phrase that they lifted from the Madison versus Marbury case in 1803, Supreme Court case in 1803, in which the Supreme Court struck down part of the Judiciary Act of 1797 and said the Supreme Court is the agency of the three bodies of government that is vested with the power and responsibility to say what the law is. So here is Trump and his lawyers and his people saying it's not the Supreme Court who gets to say what the law is, which, by the way, is largely what the Constitution and certainly what many of the Federalist Papers say. Read Federalist 78, 79, 80, 81 by Alexander Hamilton. It's a complete contradiction. I mean, this is a massive power grab
by the executive branch, by Donald Trump. And this is not the American way. This is autocracy. This is dictatorship that he is proclaiming.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And more Americans should be genuinely freaked out and seriously pissed off about it. Stay with us. We'll be back with your calls in just a moment.
Our book today is Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism and Other Arguments for Economic Independence by Kristen Godsey. And this is from the introduction titled, You Might Be Suffering from Capitalism. The argument of this book can be summed up succinctly. Unregulated capitalism is bad for women. And if we adopt some ideas from socialism, women will have better lives. If done properly, socialism leads to economic independence, better labor conditions, better work-family balance, and yes, even better sex. Finding a way into a better future requires learning from the mistakes of the past, including a thoughtful assessment of the history of 20th century state socialism in Eastern Europe. That's it. If you like the idea of such outcomes, then come along for an exploration of how we might change things. If you're dubious because you don't understand why capitalism as an economic system is uniquely bad for women, and if you doubt that there could ever be anything good about socialism, this short treatise will provide some illumination. If you don't give a whit about women's lives because you're a gynophobic right-wing internet troll, save your money and go back to your parents' basement right now. This isn't the book for you. Of course, some might argue that unregulated capitalism sucks for almost everyone, but I want to focus on how capitalism disproportionately harms women. Competitive labor markets discriminate against those whose reproductive biology makes them primarily responsible for childbearing. Today, this means humans who get pink hats in the hospital and the letter F next to the name on the birth certificate, as if we've already failed by not coming into the world as a boy. Competitive labor markets also devalue those expected to be the primary caregivers of children. Although societal attitudes have evolved in this regard, our idealization of motherhood means that most of us still believe that baby needs mama, a whole lot more than papa, at least until the child is old enough to play sports. Others will argue that unregulated capitalism is not bad for all women. Yes, for those women lucky enough to sit at the top of the income distribution, the system works pretty well. Although women at the executive level still face gender pay gaps and remain underrepresented in leadership positions, on the whole, things aren't too shabby for the Sheryl Sandbergs of the world. Of course, sexual harassment still hinders progress, even for those at the top, and too many women believe that if you want to run with the big dogs, you may have to suck it up and ignore the groping and unwanted advances. And race plays an important role as well. White women do a lot better in aggregate than do women of color. But when we look at society as a whole, on average, women are comparatively worse off in countries where markets are less encumbered by regulation, taxation, and public enterprises than they are in nations where state revenues support greater levels of redistribution and larger social safety nets. Choose your data source, and you find the same story. Unemployment and poverty plague women with children. Employers discriminate against women without children because they might have them in the future. In the United States in 2013, women over the age of 65 suffered from poverty at much greater rates than men and dominated those in the category of extreme poverty. Globally, women face higher rates of economic deprivation. Women are often the last to be hired and the first to be fired in cyclical downturns. And when they do find employment, bosses pay them less than men. When states need to slash government spending on education, health care, or old age pensions, mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives must pick up the slack, diverting their energy to care for the young, the sick, and the elderly. Capitalism thrives on women's unpaid labor in the home because women's care work supports lower taxes. Lower taxes mean higher profits for those already at the top of the income ladder, mostly men. But capitalism was not always so savage. Throughout much of the 20th century, state socialism presented an existential challenge to the worst excesses of the free market. The threat posed by Marxist ideologies forced Western governments to expand social safety nets to protect workers from the unpredictable but inevitable booms and busts of the capitalist economy. After the Berlin Wall fell, many celebrated the triumph of the West, consigning socialist ideas to the dustbin of history. But for all its faults, state socialism provided an important foil for capitalism. It was in response to a global discourse of social and economic rights, a discourse that appealed not only to the progressive populations of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, but also to many men and women in Europe and Western Europe and North America, that politicians agreed to improve working conditions for wage laborers, as well as to create social programs for children, the poor, the elderly, the sick, and the disabled, mitigating exploitation and the growth of income inequality. Although there were important antecedents in the 1980s, once state socialism collapsed, capitalism shook off the constraints of market regulation and income redistribution. Without the looming threat of a rival superpower, the last 30 years of global neoliberalism have witnessed a rapid shriveling of social programs that protect citizens from cyclical instability and financial crises, and reduce the vast inequality of economic outcomes between those at the top and those at the bottom of the income distribution. For much of the 20th century, Western capitalist countries also endeavored to outdo the East European countries in terms of women's rights, fueling progressive social change. For example, the state socialists in the USSR and Eastern Europe were so successful at giving women economic opportunities outside the home that initially, for the 2 decades after the end of World War II, women's wage work was conflated with the evils of communism. The American way of life meant male breadwinners and female homemakers. But slowly, socialist championing of women's emancipation began to chip away at the Leave It to Beaver ideal. The Soviet launch of Sputnik in 1957 spurred American leaders to rethink the costs of maintaining traditional gender roles. They feared the state socialists enjoyed an advantage in technological development, and why women have better sex under socialism.
Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
They built a machine fueled by fear. A whisper grows and it's all you hear. From every screen it feeds the fire, twisting truth to fuel desire. A mother's cry, a worker's loss, a calculated line they'll toss. They turn your pain into their gold, selling grievance never gets old. The grievance machine, it's always on, spinning stories dusk till dawn. Fear and lies are its gasoline. Bow to the beast, the grievance machine.
35 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So Denise Chung was the top prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., and she resigned yesterday. And I think the reason why she resigned is particularly fascinating. The administration had ordered her to go into a private company's bank account and steal their money, impound their money, seize their money, not just freeze the account. She actually offered to freeze their account. And the Emil Bove apparently said, no, take the money. Now, this company was a federal contractor with the Department of Energy that was working on, they had been awarded a grant for clean energy and environmental projects under the Biden administration. It was part of $20 billion in grants overall. We have no idea how much money this was involved here. And we don't know if, once she resigned, they found somebody else who would actually do it. It looks like it. But increasingly, it looks like your checking account isn't safe from these people. If the Republicans, if this administration decides that they want to take your money without due process. Now, this was her objection. The reason that Denise Chung resigned, the head prosecutor, was that there was no legal basis for this. There was no due process. We have a Fourth Amendment protection of privacy that, in our person and our papers, which should extend to our bank accounts. But no, they're just reaching out and saying, you have been bad. We are taking your money. When do they start doing that to people like you and me? This is wild stuff. These people are completely out of control. This is not the democracy that America had been prior to this second Trump administration. So what's on your mind? Mary in Seattle. Hey, Mary, what's up?
Hi. I was concerned because I was hearing something about disarming and with Russia, and I thought I saw an article about it, and I'm like, isn't that what happened to Ukraine? They gave away their nuclear weapons, and also Russia has had disarmament agreements before, and I'm not sure of the outcome, but did they even honor the past disarmament? And who would disarm themselves at a time when you got Kim Jong and North Korea, you got all the other threats against America, and Putin has said several times he wants to shoot off the nuclear weapons, and our government is talking about disarming us of our nuclear weapons.
Well, let me give you the story here,
that?
Mary. Here's the deal. First off, yes, a week or so ago, Donald Trump kind of floated this thing about nuclear disarmament. Back in 1994, the Soviet Union fell in 91. And in 1994, the third largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world was in Ukraine. We had the number one, Russia was number two, Ukraine was number three. And they were number three because that was a good chunk of Russia's nuclear weapons, or the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons, were placed in Ukraine to kind of keep them away from Moscow, you know, to not make Russia itself a target of retaliatory strikes. So here's Ukraine with this huge stockpile of nuclear weapons that could have as easily been pointed at Moscow as at New York. And they entered into good faith negotiations with the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia, these three countries, in Budapest in 1994. Bill Clinton facilitated this, made this happen. And what came out of this was a document called the Budapest Memorandum, in which the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia all promised that if Ukraine gave those nuclear weapons to Russia, Russia would give Ukraine $5 billion to cover the cost of decommissioning and moving them, and would promise to always respect and, in fact, even defend the territorial borders of Ukraine. And that agreement stood until 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea. And then, of course, 3 years ago, they invaded Ukraine proper and went after Kyiv. So the Budapest, and Zelensky has pointed this out several times, you guys are ignoring, essentially a treaty that we have. It's not a full-blown treaty, but because it wasn't ratified by the United States Senate, but it's damn close. I mean, it's a memorandum of understanding. It's an agreement between these four countries. You guys have failed to honor this, and you need to. So, yeah, I share your concern, Mary, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Trump tried to unilaterally disarm America, and then Putin said, hey, if you try to defend, I'm going to attack Poland and Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia next, the Baltic states, and if you try to stop me, I will send nukes at New York City. And Trump would say, oh, no, that's okay, go ahead and take Europe. Basically like happened in the 1930s. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Mary, thank you for the call. Augusta in Cape Vincent, New York. Hey, Augusta, what's on your mind today?
Well, sir, on the 17th, I took part in a protest march in Watertown, New York, which was very successful. There were about 50 of us. A bitter, bitter cold day. I thoroughly was proud of the fact that we were doing it. It's under that 50.501 that you talk about. Mm-hmm. They were the ones that organized it. I know that was only supposed to be for state capitals. Watertown is not a state capital. In fact, it's very, very Republican. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of cars go by giving us the finger. And a guy went by with a big flag on the end of his truck that said, Trump won, get over it. Yeah. But we're going to take part in them again and again because we need to get out there. I understand what we're doing. I love free speech. I'm a subscriber for your program and for your newsletters. The problem I'm having is that there's nothing anywhere else that even begins to talk about what we talk about.
Yeah.
When we did that protest march, our local television stations did not even cover it.
Oh, my God. Is it a Sinclair station?
It's a CBS.
Oh, CBS affiliate. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, well, they're being sued right now by Trump, so they're probably afraid, too.
I think that's probably what it was. But you know, somewhere along the line, we've got to really rise up and really start talking. I'm aware of all the things that you talk about there. I know Musk is under investigation, and I know he's not a good person. His family got all their money from apartheid workers and probably just sent them home with a sandwich and had them work in the emerald mines and never gave them anything. But, you know, they got rich and the poor got poorer.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I love your program. I don't want to keep you on it. I just want you to try to get this word out. Try to get more people listening. How are we going to...
I am doing everything I can, Augusta. But please, you know, share the good news. If everybody watching or listening right now were to simply reach out to 2 friends and say, hey, you need to check out this program, or you need to check out this network, you need to listen to Sirius XM, you need to watch Free Speech TV, you need to listen to WCPT or KTNF or KPFK or whatever it may be. If everybody was just to reach out to 2 people, and you know, odds are maybe half of them would say, okay, cool, we could double our audience, you know, very, very quickly. So please become an evangelist. Augusta, thank you for the call. Spot on. It's great to hear from you. Jim in Alexander, Arkansas. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
I had a question about our forefathers. One of their battle cries was no taxation without representation.
Correct.
And what I'm leading to is we have voters who can't vote, but they're taxed. And I was wondering if there could be a lawsuit or a taxpayer's lawsuit. Or I just want to hear what you say, okay?
Yeah, I get it, Jim. And here's the thing. The vast majority of Americans want Social Security to be strengthened. They want Medicare to be strengthened and not privatized. They want our public schools to be stronger. They want college to be free or very inexpensive. The vast majority of Americans want the right to unionize, the absolute, you know, card check, the absolute right to unionize. The vast majority of Americans want a strong public health infrastructure. We haven't gotten any of those things in over 30 years. And the reason why is because of big money in politics. And that's because the Supreme Court ruled that it's okay to bribe politicians. So we now have this oligarchy, this cacacox, however you say it, this phony democracy, this thing that looks like democracy. And so I would argue, Jim, that we are all experiencing taxation without representation, except for the top 1%, who are getting, you know, hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars in tax breaks from Republicans every time there's a Republican president. Reagan did it, Bush did it, Trump did it, Trump's setting to do it again. But I agree with you, and I think the old battle cry of 1776, no taxation without representation, it should work just as good today as it did back then. Jim, thank you for the call. I mean, when was the last time that Congress actually did something to help all of us? You know, I suppose there was some stuff done under the Biden administration, but really big programs? Stick around. I'll be right back with more of your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I mean, even Obamacare was a Heritage Foundation plan to help increase the profits of the health insurance industry. Back with your calls, please. And welcome back. Christina in Sonora, California. Hey, Christina, what's on your mind today?
Well, good morning, Tom. So glad to talk with you as always. But I'm thinking maybe the taxation without representation is flipped, and now it's representation without taxation for the very rich. So
that's a good point.
Know, I was just thinking about that. You always make me think, and that's fabulous. But I was concerned about yesterday's call about, you know, the presidents, where are they, the Democrats, where are they? And I was thinking of that. I think it's Edmund Burke, the quote that the only thing necessary for evil to survive is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what's happening. And I just also want to bring up that, you know, I find it odd that Musk is saying all these things about, you know, what he's saying. So where are the receipts? Is anybody adding up all these jobs that have been cut and what it amounts to? So if there's all this money being cut, where are the receipts showing the amount?
You know what makes it even worse, Christina, is all these federal workers who are getting laid off. They're actually not getting laid off. They're getting fired. The termination letters say you have not performed your job appropriately, or words to that effect, which means that they won't qualify for unemployment benefits in most states. They're absolutely trying to destroy these federal workers.
They are. That's right. And, you know, Virginia getting all these cuts, isn't Virginia with a special election coming up? So how are these federal workers going to vote when they don't have a job?
That's a damn good question. That's a damn good question. The governor seems to think he's got everything under control there, but I'm skeptical.
Of course. Well, I'm skeptical, and I've always. But, you know, the other thing I just want to mention is I've noticed how the picture of Ronald Reagan is now above Trump in the Oval Office. So I feel like with the chain gang and the whole hypnotic movement with Musk and everything, that putting that picture of Reagan up to show people that, hey, I'm a Reagan Republican, is just a way of getting these Republicans that have been voting Republican since 100 years that don't like what he's doing, but he's a Reagan Republican.
It's just
so
branding.
I'll have to stick with that.
Yeah, it's branding. Trump understands branding. I mean, there's a couple of things that Trump actually understands quite well. How to get publicity and how to do branding and how to BS people, basically, how to lie to people and cause them to believe him.
Yes. And I'm so glad that I'm on Thom Hartmann brand.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Christina. I think this is a very serious problem. There's no transparency behind what the Doge people are doing. Donald Trump, there's no transparency into what Trump is doing with Putin. Trump is out here on social media telling absolute lies about Ukraine and making accusations that are quoting Putin. It's like our country has been taken over by Russia. And I don't think most Americans really thought, even people who voted for Trump, thought they were voting for that.
They do not know. And Rachel last night on her show started off with a couple of articles from people that had that buyer's remorse and saying why. You know, it's like, well, thanks for coming out and saying what you are, but now what do we do?
Yep.
So,
there you go. Yep. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, the old saying is F around and find out, right? F-A-F-O. It's happening to a lot of Republicans. There's an interesting article a letter over on Democratic Underground about how this woman's daughter-in-law lost her job after voting for Trump. She was a federal worker, lost her job, and she's calling up and crying, going, I didn't think he'd can my job. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. You know, Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew both took cash bribes while they were in the White House. Since then, you know, the Supreme Court, or at least 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court, made it a lot easier for politicians to take bribes with their Citizens United decision, which basically legalized political bribery as long as it's done through campaigns or PACs or super PACs. But for some people, there's just never enough money, right? Donald Trump has been running small-time hustles to make money for decades, selling sneakers, Bibles, steaks, vodka, water. But now he's hit the big time. He's got these fungible tokens, right? These fungible crypto assets, which are basically just digital pictures of Donald Trump that say, fight, fight, fight. And he has turned them into an $8 billion machine. His wife is in on this, too, with his Trump coin. It's a new way that foreign powers and billionaires in the United States can just shovel money into Donald Trump's pocket. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled Presidential Payola, The Evolution of Political Bribery. Check it out.
Five men in black robes took the gavel and lied, said money's got a voice and the people got denied. Turned speech into dollars, turned votes into gold, sold out our future while the nation got rolled.
$1, one vote, that's the game that they play. Now the rich make the rules and the rest get betrayed. They gutted our rights, threw them out in the street. Now democracy's drowning in a dark money sea. The billionaire coup is complete, no one stopped it. 5 on the court and people just
minutes past the hour. And Marty in Wixom, Michigan. Hey, Marty, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I definitely want to agree with your message about Trump wanting to destroy America, and I think it is likely, at least in part, due to Putin influence. I actually put a post to that effect on Robert Reich's website on November 15th, where I went through about a half a dozen of his cabinet appointees and said, hey, look, these people are not just corrupt or incompetent. These are people who want to wreck the agencies they're being put in charge of.
Correct.
So I definitely agree with that theory. However, I did want to add one other possible contributing factor here, and that is, as a psychologist, I have to observe that it's possible that as a malignant narcissist who felt persecuted by the federal government, Trump could be taking these actions in kind of a fit of anger to strike back at the entirety of his hated deep state.
Yeah.
I think it's more than that, but I think that is a contributing factor. This guy is a malignant narcissist. He feels aggrieved, and he's striking out.
I think
the end
you're
result,
right,
of course, is that we're all suffering, and he may well bring us all down, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's probably still pissed at those black people who sued him back in the 1970s for refusing to rent to him, which brought a federal lawsuit. I mean, Louise and I just watched the movie The Apprentice. It's on. I guess it was on Prime. We had to pay $3 for it or something. And it starts with Trump meeting Roy Cohn, and it ends with Roy Cohn's death. So it's basically about Roy Cohn's relationship with Trump and all the lessons he taught him on how to wield power. And once you see that, you understand. But the other thing you understand is that these guys, they're all about grievance, and they're all about destroying their enemies, and they're all about taking no prisoners. And they have no respect for democracy, the rule of law, or the way that things are supposed to work. Marty, thank you. That's a great contribution to the program. Thank you very much. Nina in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Nina, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm glad you got to watch The Apprentice. It was telling.
Yeah.
But you knew all that. I had an aunt that was in the art business in New York City, and my father's aunt, and she knew Roy Cohn. And she said, vicious as they come.
Yeah.
Sick, and vicious.
Yeah.
This morning I listened to Martin O'Malley from Maryland. I think that's his name. And he was in charge of one of these, he had something to do with Social Security when
he was the commissioner of Social Security. I saw that. If you're talking about the interview on Joe Scarborough's program, I saw that.
No, it was a different one.
Oh.
But it was this morning, but it was on the radio.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was the same thing.
Yeah.
But he was saying that for years they were reducing the amount of people that were working in the department, the Congress was, and that by the time he got involved, he said, they had to really, really, really step up the pace because there were so many baby boomers that were coming of age to collect their money that they didn't have enough people working there.
Right.
But they were able to get it going, and they had it going really good. But that if they continue to wipe out the department, they will bring the whole department down.
Here's how it works, and this is very intentional, Nina. They've done this with Medicare, for example, and they're going to do it with Social Security. You cut the staff, so now when people apply for Social Security, it takes months. If you call them, you're on hold for 4 hours, and people very quickly grow to hate the federal bureaucracy because it just treats them so badly because there's these huge delays and it's so hard to reach people. And at that point, they come forward and they say, if you call your bank, they answer the phone right away. I mean, we should just privatize this thing and hand Social Security over to Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan Chase. And at that point, people are like, well, yeah, I'm pretty pissed off at trying to get in touch with Social Security and not being treated well. So yeah, let's do it. Nina, I got to run, but there's a method to their madness. Hey, thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. 5051, FIFTY.ONE, and indivisible.org. Check them out. Did I say tag you're it? I think so. And have a great afternoon, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say